All right. Back, everyone, on Open Line tonight on a Thursday night as we talk about the presence of white nationalists in politics, especially in the wake of what happened in Washington last week. Barry just called, had a lot on his mind. Sophie said he's not a part of a political party, but he is Christian, and had a lot to say about Mayor Cooper and on. But he brought up Black Lives Matter. What have these extremist far-right groups, they've been able to spread a lot of disinformation about that group, haven't they?
Yeah, for sure. There's been a lot of disinformation about that group, and I think one thing that we should point out is just the fact that in the United States, for the last 20 years, the biggest threats to U.S. citizens have come from the far right. So in terms of political violence, there have been riots associated with and property destruction associated with Black Lives Matter in terms of response to mainly police brutality instances. But the intelligence community is very clear that the biggest threats that we face in this country come from the far right, and yet most of the attention of the intelligence community is not focused on far right and white supremacist potential terrorists. And I think we saw that kind of naivete on full display in terms of the security on the January 6th
a
protest,
clear
right?
difference. What about, though, the threat of far left groups? And I know I use the word group when I say Antifa, but I hear conservatives a lot talking about Antifa and the potential problems that group causes. Is it actually a group?
I mean, no. It's a very below ground. I don't know how to describe it. A cooperative. A number of people that most of what they do is track what they call fascists, so a variety of authoritarian movements, and do a lot of work tracking them and then opposing them when they engage in street activity, But I think it's actually very interesting that Antifa has become framed as this source of violence when more people have died at the hands of far-right extremists than any other political group since 9/11 in the United States. The FBI and Homeland Security has been very clear that the far right is, specifically groups affiliated with QAnon and white nationalism, pose the largest security threats. So, but that isn't part of the general public knowledge, and it's not even shaping how security and even we could see that last week, Capitol Police not recognizing that threat, even when all of those groups were organizing violence online, in open forums. Like, they weren't even hiding, it wasn't even on the dark web. They were planning this.
We hear about QAnon a lot, and we saw the Qs or their I don't know if it's a logo, but on display. We've seen it on display at some political rallies, and we saw it last week. I'm reading here that QAnon followers believe that a secretive group of elites is secretly controlling social institutions for satanic ends. The conspiracy also portends a great awakening during which the masses will finally grasp the existence of the depraved cabal and bring it to justice. They're held down by a secretive group of wealthy elites. Is that accurate, describing QAnon?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate in terms of the conspiracy. It's based on these random, they call them drops or postings by someone who identified themselves as Q, who has not posted since the day after the election. But yeah, it's created this very coherent conspiracy that is as you described.
Do you think Facebook and Twitter, I know, have moved to ban QAnon groups and content, but already their platforms help the movement grow exponentially. Is it too little, too late, or not?
It's far too little, too late. I mean, they gave specifically the algorithms that social media companies use. They brought the megaphone to the most radical right and violent actors to reach a public that was just unimaginable even just 10 years ago. So, I think the crackdowns are really important, but they really helped to create these like very powerful social movements based entirely on disinformation. And they certainly hold the responsibility to figuring out how to save our democracy.
All right, let's go to line 4. Smitty's been holding. Hey, Smitty, thanks for calling in. Smitty, you there? Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate what she just said about the intelligence community and what you said about Satanism with the QAnon stuff. Because I was informed about people that were kind of involved in that stuff up in Massachusetts before the Boston bombing. Because I told your guy before the Boston marathon bombing occurred, that was like a bet between community satanic type persons, and including the white nationalism, even to the false prophecy stuff. And some white guy and his followers were making bets in black gangs, kidnapping white guys, and say, well, if we're going to do this, and they say, no, we're going to do this, and they make kidnappings, like she's talking about the intelligence community and what you were saying, and it all fits together because I know somebody that knows all about that stuff that was around and living there, and knows some of the people personally, and why that bombing actually occurred between that Tamlin and the other guy did. Before the guy ended up going from a military base over to Russia somewhere, doing something, and you never find nothing out about this anywhere on the internet. But that's the first time I heard anybody talk about this, what the girl said about the intelligence community and all these things going on that nobody ever knows nothing about. And what you said involving the, like that guy that got put in Bolivia, where the QAnon stuff. And I'm going to get this right in with all things going on. Now, we know about, somebody getting kidnapped, somebody getting hurt. If you don't do this, we're going to hurt your guy and stuff like that. That's what I appreciate what you said, and that's the first time I heard it in a long time.
Smitty, thank you for calling in. We appreciate it very much. We want to go, thank you. All right, we want to go to, let me see here. Line 3 is, I believe, Linda. Hey, Linda, welcome.
Hi. I wasn't going to call in tonight, but you had a previous caller that I just had to answer something.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, he was going on about Christians. Well, do Christians approve of, like, the police officer that stood on the black man's neck until he died? Is that Christian? And Trump is the most racist person that I have ever seen. I mean, from the beginning, he was always criticizing other people. The Mexicans, this and that and this, and they're awful, evil people. Well, there's awful, evil people in white people, too. I mean, it goes all the way. And those people pretending to be Christians and believe all the lies that he's been telling them for the last 4 or 5 years is just insane. So anyway.
All right. Well, we appreciate you wanted to vent a little bit, Linda. We appreciate you calling in.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings me to something, Sophie, about religion. How much of a role does religion play? And before I get into this, I'll say, Christianity is a big religion, just like Muslim and or Islam, I should say. These are big religions with people who believe in maybe some core things, but different approaches and how they read certain texts and interpret certain texts of their religion. But does it play a role in some of these extremist groups?
Certainly, and I think what we've also seen, I think very unfortunately over the last 5 years, is that a huge base of the Republican Party are white evangelicals, conservative Christians who are really support the family, have conservative fiscal views, but I think a lot of them have become radicalized around race in a dangerous way. Mm-hmm. In that, there's, I think, it's become more acceptable to be vocally anti-immigrant, and and vocally denying the problem of anti-Black racism in the country. And I am concerned about that moving forward. I also think there's become a big overlap in terms of conspiracies like QAnon, where a number of white evangelicals have kind of adopted this conspiratorial thinking, which leads to very anti-democratic outcomes.
Well, but after what we saw last week, don't you think that the influence has dwindled for these groups?
I think we're going to have to see what happens. I do think that there's going to be a reckoning within the Republican Party, as we were talking about earlier, and where people who are pro-democracy are going to have to take a stand. And then, I think we're going to see splintering off and, larger groups of people that are actually supporting, potentially supporting violence or more conspiratorial thinking. There was a
Go ahead, sorry.
There's a large survey done by a political scientist at Vanderbilt, Larry Bartels, that he wrote. The survey was done last year, that basically found that for conservative Republicans, 40% of them said they believe that there will come a point where they have to take the law into their own hands to defend the American way of life, and specifically around what he described as ethnic antagonism or fear of demographic change. And so, I think that there are these larger anti-democratic and pro-violent trends happening within white conservatism that I think there needs to be some very serious conversations within the conservative movement about what is their vision. Is it about, and I feel like we saw one potential vision for that last week, right? Which is about, anti-democratic vigilante violence. And, I think most white conservatives, my hope is that are going to want a different vision for their problem.
We'll go back to the phones, and we'll go to line 5 and Rosalind. Hi, Rosalind. Rosalind, you there?
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
This is Bill.
Bill, I'm sorry, had you wrong. Go ahead, what's on your mind, Bill?
I was wanted to talk about the people that can't tell the truth from lies. People that vote for Lindsey Graham when he's been an enabler to somebody that every time he gets in front of the podium tells lies, and people believe it. And his mantra is, say it and they'll believe it. And that's telling me that he thinks we're all stupid. And I don't agree with somebody that lies and lies and lies. And what's worse, I don't see what his followers, why they can't use common sense and say maybe something's wrong here. I'd like to ask the young lady what she thinks of what we can do to stop people from lying like that. At least call them out. The media tries to call them out, and everybody says the media lies.
All right, good point. Sophie?
Yeah, it's such a complicated question. I think especially when what happens is that when we go to social media, we're often, and I think we've all seen this happen over the last 4 years too, where there's more politics happening on our social media feeds now, and there's less diversity of thought because people are banning each other or blocking each other, right? So what ends up happening is you go to social media, and your views, your beliefs are reflected back to you.
Exactly.
Or if there's misinformation, that misinformation is reflected back to you. And it can be really, I think your point is really important about, truth seems like an essential part of democratic practice. But what happens is if there's enough lies circulating in the same way, reinforcing each other, and that's all you're exposed to, then it can become very compelling to believe that they are true.
Sure.
And I think we've seen that a lot.
We're going to take another break with our guest here on Open Line, and we've got some more phone calls to get to. We'll try to squeeze them in right after this. Stay with us.